today. It's just the way the laptop is set up with the screen in the room, and I'm going to need it in order to read people's names and titles and some of the slide presentations. We're going to be, it's quite a busy agenda this afternoon because this meeting also coincides with the debrief publication from the Langdale Fylingdales fire from last year. So we'll be spending the first 30 minutes of the meeting going through some slides, which I think Area Manager Ben Ilsey is going to talk us through. We're then going to look at the performance update, which I think, Ben, you are also talking us through again. We've then got the thematic where we're talking about water safety today, which Area Manager Damien Henderson is going to talk through. And then we finally got the HMIC FRS updates around inspections, which Ben Ilsey will talk us through again. We have one public question, which we'll hear hopefully shortly before 4 o'clock. Just so that people are aware, also on the call with us today are some members of the communications team and briefings team whose cameras are off. But we also have, in addition to the fire officers I've already introduced, we have the Chief Fire Officer, Jonathan Dyson, on the call. Tom Hurst, who is the area manager, one of the other area manager for the Fire and Rescue Service. James Manning is on the call, who I think may also be contributing to the Langdale Fylingdales debrief update. And also Charlie French, who is the Director of Service Design and Delivery for the Fire and Rescue Service. That's all the Fire and Rescue Service representation today. We've got apologies from the Deputy Chief Fire Officer, Gary Mackay, and from my office, from the Office for Police, Fire and Crime, we have Amanda Wilkinson, Mark Ayres and Fiona Kinnear from the Fire and Rescue Service and the Directorate for Police, Fire and Crime. But without further ado, I'll launch us into the Langdale Fylingdales debrief, and Area Manager Ilsey, I think you're going to take us through some slides, and I've got a few questions as well.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just share my screen. I do have some slides. If you can confirm that's working okay when they come up, please.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So yes, my name is Ben Ilsey, Area Manager and Lead for Operational Assurance. I'm joined today by Group Manager James Manning, who was the kind of tactical lead for the debrief into the Fylingdales Moor wildfire we had in August last year. So I'll move the slide pack on. A bit of background in case anybody in North Yorkshire hadn't heard of the Langdale Fylingdales Moor incident. So it was a major moorland and forest fire that we attended initially in June of last year and sustained a response over a number of months. The location of the incident was in the vicinity of RAF Fylingdales in a very remote area of woodland that spread into some heathland and moorland. It involved what was a significant response, not only from North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service, but from our partner agencies in the LRF and some wider volunteers and organisations as well. And it is one of the most significant wildfires ever seen in North Yorkshire and indeed across England. So a lot of work has gone into the debrief document and process over the last few months. And we're at the point today where the debrief has been made available to the public. So the first point of today in terms of documents that are being released and available to the public, approximately 100 pages long. It's an extensive review of our document. You'll see on there and hyperlinked, it's been made available on our website. So our North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service single agency major incident debrief is being made available from today. So we're going to talk to you about some of the key points and recommendations that are in that document and where people can find it. So it's specific to our response to the major incident, does involve comment and mention of some of the support we got from partners and other organisations as well. It contains a very detailed timeline of events, so we tell the story of the incident, what happened and when. There's then a thematic assessment. Much of the kind of a document is a thematic analysis of different areas of our response, and each section culminates with a summary of what went well and also the learning opportunities. So I'll say at that point, I'm incredibly proud of a lot of things we did as an organisation and partner agencies at RAF Fylingdales. We stopped the fire spreading to critical national infrastructure. We protected people's lives and property as well. But we've been very honest with this piece of work around learning opportunities, psychological safety in the organisation, non-attributable, but looking at how can we improve performance and our response in future. It also makes a series of recommendations that James will touch on a bit later in the presentation And some of the learning and recommendations that we have from the incident are significant enough. We will be making submissions to both national organisational learning, which is a fire and rescue service specific national learning programme, and joint organisational learning, which is multi-agency and JESIP. So also be made.
If I can just pause you there for 1 second, just before we move on to the fire investigation report. So just a thank you to everyone on this call, but also the people who aren't on this call, for everything they've done to pull these debrief documents together, because there's the fire investigation report as well as the major incident debrief, which I've had advanced sight of, and I know is really comprehensive. I know also just how important it is for us to make sure that the learning is happening following this incident. It was a huge response effort, I know, from firefighters, but also from partners, from farmers, from landowners and the local community. And we also know that the risks from wildfires are growing, and so therefore it's really important that both we and, as you said, making representations through to national government, are also being clear about what the learning needs to be, not just in terms of fire response and prevention, but also in terms of the wider partnership across the region. And just to make sure that people are aware, the Mayor and I have also released a statement today, not particularly in response to this debrief, because this speaks for itself, but there is also a wider North Yorkshire Local Resilience Forum briefing on the fire. I think it's the first one of their recommendations documents that's been also released at lunchtime today, and we've also released a whole series of questions in response to that as well. But absolutely determined to make sure that we're doing all the learning that we can from this, and I absolutely don't think that all of that sits with the Fire and Rescue Service. I already know how much we're going to be going through in this presentation about that learning, but equally a lot of our response is always going to be about partnership, and that means working really closely with the partners who've been part of that response all the way through. But thank you for making this public, but also making the investigation report public. It's slightly redacted to ensure that people's personal information is not in the public domain, but actually also reveals the source of the fire, which I know we talked about, I think it was back in February, but also really important that we're doing that learning just to make sure that people are aware of the dangers of fire, particularly in open moorland and rural areas. But sorry to hijack your slide, you can carry on.
No problem, you're welcome. So yeah, the second document we're going to release as an agency today will be, as promised, a redacted version of the fire investigation report. So there's some interim findings reported to the public back in March. There was a press release of things of that nature then. It's redacted for the reasons you just mentioned there. It's to avoid, obviously, be compliant with data protection legislation, but also protect the confidentiality of witnesses. So it's quite a technical document. It may be of less interest to a member of the public than the debrief report that pulls some of these themes out. A lot of technical information and appendices in there, but the report is designed to establish the cause, origin and development of the fire. So that's been made available as well via the same link that's on the website that can be followed the hyperlink for.
Great, and just because I'm not sure everyone watching will be aware, but one of the reasons that I think it was always planned that it would be released at this point, but it was certainly a particular request from stakeholders that we make that investigation report public, and some of that is just about ensuring that we build and maintain public confidence in the work that the Fire and Rescue Service are doing, which is obviously incredibly important, and that means just being transparent about everything that we have and putting it in the public domain.
Thank you. And then the third document that's being released today, as you already mentioned there, is the Local Resilience Forum, which is essentially the gathering of our Category 1, Category 2 response agencies and wider partners in North Yorkshire. So whereas our single agency debrief ascertains and analyses the single agency response from us as a fire and rescue service, this document looks at the kind of the multi-agency coordination of the incident and the wider impact as well. So we are a part of Local Resilience Forum as a fire and rescue service. This document was approved at Executive Board this morning and we've made available to the public also. And again, the links there, we can find that. So that's more the kind of the coordination of the incident, predominantly off-scene from partner agencies and where we got additional support, which we're very grateful for during the incident. So they're the 3 documents that are being made available to members of the public and partners today.
And just on that one, just before you move forward on that one, just to ensure that people are aware. So the Mayor, David Skaith, and I have also released our response to that fire report from the Local Resilience Forum, which has been published, I think, at lunchtime today, partly because, as you rightly identify, this has been about the partnership response. It's as much about health colleagues or the impact on the environment or the impact on the local economy, and we've released an extensive series of assurance questions that we're seeking responses to around that Local Resilience Forum report, which has been published today, which is also an incredible piece of work, and certainly a huge thanks to officers from the Local Resilience Forum who have pulled all of that information together. But it is really important that we build public confidence in response to these incidents on this scale, particularly given the level of response and resources that had to go into fighting this fire. We're just really keen to ensure that all the learning that needs to happen right across every agency, not just the Fire Rescue Service, that we make those representations as well on behalf of the public into the Local Resilience Forum. But that, yeah, as you say, that's been released separately today by the Local Resilience Forum at lunchtime today.
That's correct. So the recommendations in that report have been approved to go to the continuous improvement function of the LRF, and it's pleasing to see some of those have already been actioned and making good progress with. We'll cover ours as well later in this presentation. So in terms of our debrief process, really pleasing, we got a lot of feedback from our workforce in terms of debrief returns during this incident. So we received more than 250 debrief forms from our members of staff. There was a number of focused debrief sessions that brought in focus groups of people to kind of tease out themes from different staff groups, as well as the other partners who attended. We have worked, whilst the LRF debrief is independently authored by an independent person who doesn't work for Fire and Rescue Service, there's good synergy between the 2 documents because we have been engaging with those groups to make sure that they do flow. So we have had some evidence sources from the LRF debrief to kind of QA against ours as well. A lot of work has gone into kind of quality assurance and cross-checking the accuracy of the debrief triangulation processes through data, staff feedback, and other evidence sources. So we feel we've got a very credible basis for the statements and recommendations we make in our debrief process. So it's very important to us that we provide psychological safety to our workforce and our commanders, that we don't assess this with an element of blame or hindsight, that we're not certainly viewing any of the things from the debrief as failings in any way at all. They are learning opportunities. So things that with the benefit of hindsight, we can improve on potentially for the future and areas for to look at, both as a single agency and a multi-agency as well. And as I said earlier, that's been made available and published, available to the public today. So I'll hand you over to Group Manager Manning at this point. So James is going to talk you through, not necessarily, like I said, it's a lengthy document, it's 100 pages long, basically to help people navigate through the document if they were to read it themselves and what the key element and structure is. So I'll hand you over to James now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Hi, James.
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to take you, first of all, through the key timeline of events very briefly. So first of all, we first attended Langdale Moor on the 26th of June 2025, and it was just north of Delby Forest, and it was on Forestry England's land, and there was a fire, basically reports of smoke in that area. We responded with up to 3 firefighting appliances at the time and a station manager, and during that time we were fighting that fire with various different suppression techniques, but ultimately, because of the type of vegetation in that area and the types of incident that this is, there was a strategy that was required to put in place a number of fire breaks to surround that fire as a way of controlling it. That was done over a week or so, and up until the 4th of July, where we felt that that incident was fully surrounded and handed over to the Forestry England. And that is a recognised technique that we do, and with a process that's been put in place with monitoring arrangements. So when we leave, those monitoring arrangements are put in place to record and dial into our fire control. That continued on in a stable phase for many weeks up until the 11th of August, where we had another appliance, a Gothland appliance, which was attending a separate incident and was passing this particular previous incident and noticed that it had breached the previous fire break. Therefore, we scaled up and re-attended that incident to start fighting the fire again. In this instance, where previously it was in the forestry area, this had reached a open moorland now, where there was ready fuel in the form of heather, and therefore that created a flare-up and an increased fire front. As of on the 13th of August, the wind direction and strength increased and looked to move that fire towards RAF Filingdales, which is critical national infrastructure. And for that reason, the Fire and Rescue Service declared it a major incident, and resources were scaled up to protect that as part of that strategy. Also, later in that day, as crews were attending, a number of explosions occurred, which highlighted that there was some unexploded ordnance in that area, which was, of course, a significant and major risk to anybody working in the area. Therefore, we realigned our risk assessment, if you like, to account for that, to keep people safe, and meant that we had to fight that fire from designated tracks around the area, and meant it was very limited in where people could physically get into. And I say our firefighting tactics had to adapt accordingly. The following day, on the 14th of August, we had a second fire.
Apologies. Would you mind just speeding up slightly, because we've only got half an hour for this whole section, and I'm keen to make sure that we also get to the recommendations.
Of course, apologies. So on the 14th, we had a secondary fire, which was 3 kilometres away from this particular incident, but demonstrated that we have concurrent incidents at this same time. We held the first SCG on the 15th of August as part of those arrangements, and realising it was a protracted incident. On the 25th of August, up until that period, we had a relative period of stability over 11 days, where fire breaks and firefighting tactics held the fire in place. But due to a wind direction on that particular day and an increase in wind strength, there's some uncharacteristic fire spread and wind tornadoes, or fire tornadoes that we're calling them, occurred, and ultimately that fire breached that fire break on a northern boundary on that occasion on the 25th. Therefore, we had to reposition our resources to a new control line and continue firefighting in that way. The fire was travelling towards potentially some businesses and caravan parks. Therefore, they were evacuated on the 26th of August. And by the 27th of August, our crews had been obviously committed to this incident for a substantial amount of time, and therefore national assets and resources were requested to help give them respite and welfare, the adequate welfare required to continue to fight this fire. As we reached the 29th of August, the fire was then fully contained again, and roads reopened on the 1st of September. And then we felt fully that the fire was fully controlled under the 4th of September, moving on to the 5th of September, where we de-escalated that major incident status as a multi-agency element, but kept it still for fire and rescue for the purposes of the fact that we could quickly access further resources if we required them. And that finally moved us on to a de-escalation for the single agency on the 23rd of September, and then finally closing the incident on the 22nd of December. Obviously,
great, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
And look, I feel like we've actually dealt with the narrative of the fire a couple of times previously in the public domain, which is, I think, why I'd asked that at this meeting we didn't really dwell on that. But The question I just wanted to ask, which I think the public will be interested in, is just if you can give a sense of what the scale up was in terms of the numbers of appliances attending from the beginning of the first call, right, you know, just in terms of the numbers of appliances who would be there, and at the point at which a major incident was declared, what the difference was at that point?
Yeah, so the initial incident was around 3 pumping appliances, and then that scaled up to, at its peak, 25 fighting appliances, but that's not including a number of specialist appliances, including contractors, multi-agency assistance, and other fire and rescue services that support. So just, yeah, going from 3 to around 20 fire appliances gives you a good understanding of how that was scaled up.
And just again, for people to understand, in the context of the North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service, I think we had regional mutual aid pretty much certainly from the first flare up. But at what point, how many of our own fire appliances would have been attending alongside mutual aid before the national assets call, which was at the end of August, in the week after the bank holiday, just to understand the scale of how much of our own assets would have been attending?
Yeah, so at any one time, that was around 15 appliances, up to around 15 appliances. But of course, we had others that were committing to continuing to keep their own areas safe, and that transition for welfare, like you've mentioned, with other services as well.
Okay, in which case, let's move on, if we can, to the recommendations, because I'm just mindful of time. I don't want to gloss over this because I think this is something that the public are really interested in. I think we can move over the thematic analysis because I think Ben explained that at the beginning, but if we can just go to the recommendations slide. Yes, great, thank you.
Okay, so the recommendations were culminated on the basis of the learning that was throughout the document, and therefore there was a number of recommendations. Obviously, I'm not going to go through every one today. I can pull out a number of those recommendations as examples. So first of all, recommendation number 7 was about reviewing our wildfire assets and capability and interoperability around that. So again, that's around the fact that we've used many different resources as part of this incident, and actually having a shared asset register with our partners in the area to access those capabilities in a timely manner is something that we want to take forward as part of these recommendations.
Thank you. Sorry, just if I can just ask, because people may remember that at the time of the fire, we were also consulting, the Fire and Rescue Service was consulting on the Community Risk Management Plan, which included a proposal around a water bowser, which I know was contentious at the time, but the Fire and Rescue Service currently still has 2 water bowsers. I'm right in thinking, could someone just confirm how many water bowsers and water sources we were using during the course of the fire?
So I can answer that one, Deputy Mayor. So this fluctuated throughout the incident, but up to 5 different water bowsers at different times from different agencies, including our own at different times. But they are a range of different types, if you like, with different adaptions on, if you like, to draw the water out of them. And that's part of this recommendation, is to ensure that, one, we know where they're coming from, how we can access them at speed, and have that interoperability to be able to share resources easily.
Sorry to challenge you slightly there, and it may be that someone else needs to come in and clarify. I was pretty sure I'd been told a different number to that, particularly as part of the response to the CRMP. Because I remember it was a question that we obviously understandably asked on behalf of the public at the time, because people were understandably saying, why are we proposing reducing the number of water bowsers that the Fire and Rescue Services hold itself? I thought the number was closer to 20 than 5. Can someone please clarify? Is that Tom?
Yeah, I'll jump in now if that's okay, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, please.
So yeah, we use a wide range in different sizes, capacities, volumes of bowsers. So we use road bowsers, which were available on road access, but also we use the farming community and agricultural contracting for houses, which we use multiple over the considerable duration of the incident. That's currently a piece of work that I'm now doing, firming up the MOU with the water authorities to make sure we've got that guaranteed provision at all times for road tanker use, but also working with procurement to make sure that we're doing a sustained, fair, easily accessible access to off-road water provision at any point. And then the final bit of that is making sure that the connections and couplings are interlined. So whenever we do this piece of work and we do require anyone from an agricultural off-road capacity, that we can utilise our equipment aligned with theirs.
That's great, yes, and certainly some of the farmers I've spoken to have certainly made that observation, so that's great that that's already something that is in train. Am I right in thinking, if someone could just confirm, that if people did want to get confirmation around the Bowsers from Langdale, that it was in the final report from the Community Risk Management Plan? I don't know, is anyone able to clarify? I thought that that's where that information was, if someone can just confirm.
Deputy Mayor, I'm losing signal dropping in and out here, but so I apologise if I'm speaking over other people. So the CRMP provided details on what the service's intent was and what it wants to do around water bowsers. And of course, all of that is available online. The key point here is around the provision of the water bowser and how we physically get water onto the moors, noting that anything of a normal road standard vehicle was extremely limited and unable to access the moors. And that's why we need different vehicles, hence the potential change of use from a standard bowser into a specialist vehicle for us to make that accommodation over onto the moors or other areas requiring, firefighting on moorland or forestry areas.
Thank you, and particularly the Arga cats from memory were the pieces of equipment that were integral to fighting this particular fire. Apologies, James, carry on from where you were.
No problem. Thank you. So recommendation 10, moving on to that, just again a flavour around our look to review having wildfire specific PPE or personal protective equipment. So for this incident, we had firefighters well protected in their structural firefighting kit. However, that it means that it traps the heat, so it's extremely hot and has an impact on their time that they, and exhaustion rates, if you like, around that. So again, that's something that we really want to look into and already started to develop. Another one in there.
And can I just add, there was also an issue I think I've read in the learning, the areas for recommendations was also about PPE for partners, because obviously, which may not be the Fire and Rescue Services responsibility, but we obviously do rely on partners and did rely on partners for this particular incident. So ensuring that there is appropriate PPE and equipment for our own firefighters, and as you said, ensuring that that is sufficiently flexible for firefighters who might be responding over a prolonged period, so for an entire shift, for example, whereas normally I think if they were attending an incident they wouldn't be wearing that equipment for quite such a long time, but also just whether there was anything that you could add around PPE for other partners who might be supporting the Fire and Rescue Service, as we know they were during Langdale, in particular the farmers and landowners and the gamekeepers. Does the Chief Fire Officer want to come back on that?
Thank you. I'll let any of the other team come in on the detail of the PPE on scene. One of the key points here, Deputy Mayor, was around us, of course, protecting or being able to protect in the future anyone that works with the service. Hence that we're stepping forward with a list of contractors that we're entering into a legal agreement with, and then we can provide them with the instruction, information and training that we need them to respond to. In Langdale, because of the size of the incident, we know that there were people that were self-deploying onto land in other areas. We did everything we could to obviously maintain and help promote the health and safety within those perimeters, but that became extremely difficult and challenging. Hence the approach now where we're trying to streamline that, have the provisions in place, and then the much greater not only controls, but the safeguards for people that respond with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And certainly the Mayor and I were at the caravan parks that were affected just last week, speaking to the businesses about the impact, and certainly there is a balance, isn't there, between trying to encourage a community that is understandably trying to protect its own landscape and its own land, but also trying to ensure that people are doing that in a way that doesn't put them in danger. And I think that has been that is an ongoing challenge and something that we absolutely need to get right to ensure that we're flexible enough to respond to any incident, but also keeping everyone, including our partners, safe when we do it. So, but it's great to see that acknowledged in the report, and that the work is already underway to look at that. Certainly was something that the businesses that we spoke to last week were still raising, that it had obviously been an issue. Apologies, James, please carry on. Jonathan, did you want to come back on that point, or is it a legacy hand?
Apologies, like I said, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that sort of nicely takes us into the next recommendation. So I mentioned a couple there that were specific for fire and rescue, and there was a couple of recommendations, well, 8 recommendations as part of the 21 that were cross-cutting across ourselves and partner agencies through the LRF. So the next example I'll use is recommendation 15, which is about establishing a multi-agency wildfire pre-planning framework aligned to these sort of high impact risks. So this is about the concept of fire operations groups that we've already got established in some areas, but we want to broaden that out and to build on that through the LRF structure. And I think that example of PPE earlier on feeds into that pre-planning element with partners to really understand the risk and make sure that we're fully prepared for that. And again, as Ben mentioned earlier on, we were in the LRF meeting this morning where executive board, where that was agreed that they would take on those recommendations from our report into that future learning.
Great. The only other recommendation that I just wanted to draw people's attention to, which I think is recommendation 9, is just around drone capability, which I think has been a recommendation that is partly because, as you set out earlier, we had an exploded ordnance on this site, which actually meant that the firefighting capabilities to get on top of a fire in a way that you might have done in a different kind of wildfire scenario couldn't be undertaken in this case. But if you could just say a little bit more about the other drone capabilities, but also other water dropping capabilities, and what role that might need to play going forwards.
So this feeds in with obviously aerial capability as far as water. The helicopters were used on the incident, but I'll pause there, and I can see the chief would like to come in on this point, so I'll let him take this one.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, I mean, Deputy Mayor, I don't think any chief fire officer would think that they would be in a position where they're having to contract with helicopters. Nonetheless, that's a position we find ourselves in, and as ever, we're approaching that with gusto on to make sure that we can make that provision. Where the service has had agreements in place with both police and partner and with other fire and rescue services for drone provision. Where it isn't a failure, where this was a challenge was, of course, because police then started to need to utilise theirs, as did other services. And it's been a funding challenge in the past for us to maintain this provision. Nonetheless, we have the commitment from yourself and the Mayor that we are exploring this now. The service will move to a self-provision of drone capability. We're also exploring, and we have demonstrations next month actually on the moor itself, because the service had to utilise Starlink through local arrangements for us to actually have incident communications in these super remote rural areas. So we're not only strengthening our technology position, we're strengthening the incident command, the radio comms, everything around here. So we are already well underway with this recommendation. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks. And James, apologies, and then we can move on to the next slide. I think you mentioned something about partners in terms of water. Does that include Yorkshire Water in terms of that early pre-planning for water sourcing, and obviously not necessarily just on the moors, but perhaps in the dales as well? Is that part of the discussions that are now already underway?
Yes, it's twofold. So obviously, as a large landowner, they would be part of those conversations, but also, like you said, as part of identifying water sources, we already have mechanisms for in that space, but we want to continue to build on that and our operational intelligence. So yes to both of those elements. Thank you.
Jonathan?
Yes, just quickly, Deputy Mayor. Yes, as you're aware, I have now convened a North Yorkshire Fire Operations Group. This has strategic and both tactical groups. Ultimately, We are working with local landowners and businesses. Businesses within this element have a duty under the regulatory reform order for protection of their businesses, which is a point that we are helping them to both step into and their understanding, and also with landowners and anybody that can convene to make us better and themselves better in this space are coming to the table with there. That will continue to grow. But ultimately, we need to know from the landowners where their access is, where they understand the challenges are, and them to then proactively provide that information to the service. This is a holistic approach as opposed to the service trying to find one solution. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And just to kind of underline, and we can move on to the next part, but all of those recommendations are now in the public domain because the report is in the public domain. So if people have future questions, they can raise those with us and with the service directly through my office. But I think we can move on to your next slide, if that's okay.
Okay, back to me, James. Thank you for that. So just a couple of key messages for our communities to this opportunity on 2 points. So firstly, prevention. So like most large fires generally start as small fires and are preventable. So a key message going into the hotter, drier summer months in North Yorkshire. Most fires are preventable. So please be very vigilant with any open fires, disposable barbecues, and do not leave any glass or litter in rural areas. If you see smoke or fire, please report it early to give us the best chance of extinguishing it. So in terms of prevention approach, there's a lot of learning from this. It was probably put it in the public kind of conscience now, just how large these fires can get and the disruption they can cause. And then secondly, the incident also served as a very timely reminder of the importance of our highly valuable on-call firefighters. Most of our firefighters in rural areas are on-call firefighters. They were hugely important during this incident, as they are every day to our communities in North Yorkshire. So at most of our locations, we are always recruiting. So if you do live within 5 minutes of an on-call fire station in North Yorkshire, please do follow the link on the website, make some inquiry, pop into your nearest station, ask some questions. It's a very rewarding role, less restrictive than it used to be in terms of bands and hours you can make available as well. So a couple of key messages for our communities while we had the chance around prevention and on-call. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks. And before you just move on to that, what I think is the final slide, just a question really about disposable barbecues. So the Mayor and I have come out quite clearly and saying that they should be certainly banned in our region, where we know that we have such a large amount of beautiful countryside that is beautiful, but also therefore at risk from wildfire. Unfortunately, I was in Malton today for something else, and I'm afraid some of the major supermarkets are still stocking those disposable barbecues. They were actually on offer in one of the supermarkets I was in today, and actually that is unfortunately encouraging people to not have a responsible barbecue, which obviously you can have anywhere and should have anywhere in your own garden, but actually those disposable barbecues unfortunately encourage people to have those open flames in parks and open spaces where they do contribute towards the risk of wildfires in our region. I just wondered whether the Fire and Rescue Service had a position currently on disposable barbecues other than the advice, which is obviously clearly in the slide, around them being important to be used responsibly. I don't know whether the fire chief is the... yeah, do you want to come in? And I don't know whether the fire chief wants to come in.
I think, Deputy Mayor, we fully appreciate your stance and the position, and you're trying to do anything you can to stop these sort of fires taking place around the wildfires based upon disposable barbecues. We are looking at this nationally with the National Fire Chiefs Council as part of the wildfire group that feeds into the overall prevention committee. While they aren't banned, what we're trying to do is try and discourage the use of them, let's just say, and then also try and, if people have the urge to use them, that they do them in a safe manner. So we're just making sure that as well that all our advice and try and keep people as safe as possible, and the use of these. Unfortunately, we've seen some devastating effects of the use of these when they've not been used appropriately. So we will continue to work with the National Fire Chiefs Council, but also, while they are still readily available, try and encourage people to use them in a safe manner to avoid any sort of wildfire spread.
Right, and I think people perhaps don't realise just how dangerous they can be. They obviously get extremely hot. The base of them, if they're not raised off the ground, will almost certainly burn through into the ground below. If they're not raised above it, and obviously because they get extremely hot, they're very, very difficult to dispose of because they're hot. Because people, if they're out and about, won't necessarily realise that. They also need to dispose of it responsibly if they're using them. Jonathan, do you want to come back on that one?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, this was, we discussed this in the run-up to the summer around, the possibility of further wildfires caused by this cooking. And, I wholeheartedly support yourself and the Mayor in taking that stance. I did see social media comments around that it was the fun police and taking the fun out to where we're going. All we're trying to say here is that we understand that people want to have and enjoy, understandably, this amazing county. But the point is, humans are fallible. We all make mistakes. We just want to continually support people to understand that they can enjoy it. Please do so responsible. Think of others in this space, and then just look at what occurred last year as a result of something that we would hope would never be repeated. Unfortunately, wildfires will continue to happen. We don't want them in North Yorkshire. We don't want the public or anybody at danger because of them. That's the core message. Thank you.
And thank you, absolutely. And as we've just seen in the previous slides, the impact of this fire started with some almost certainly open cooking on the moors and has ended in this enormous incident across over between 20 and 25 square kilometres of our moorland destroyed by this fire. Apologies, did you want to just move on to your final slide?
Okay, yep. So just lastly, a number of quick acknowledgements while we have an audience. So as I said before, we've been very critical, self-critical in our debrief, and we want to share with the public, as we have done there, the recommendation for improvement. But we are incredibly proud of a lot of the work that our teams did during the incident. So all of our staff, in terms of the key groups of whole time day crew and on-call volunteers, also the really good teams in control who coordinated a lot of that activity, and also the wider support teams who support the incident, excuse me, kept the incident, kind of the service running behind as whilst we dealt with that incident as well. We've mentioned before the local resilience forum partners. I won't list them all, and there you can read them on there. But especially appreciative in terms of the kind of the bottom group there, if you like, the local landowners, the farmers, the contractors, the local communities and businesses were massive in terms of supporting our response, proactive work, protecting their areas and their communities, and also the support and encouragement they gave us whilst dealing with that incident as well, and their patience whilst we resolved it as well. So just for the opportunity, the final slide there is just to acknowledge and appreciate a lot of people who helped support during the difficult period during the major incident as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and certainly I would echo all of that, and particularly for the group, as you say, at the bottom of that slide, who were the kind of non-professional firefighting support network, if that's the right way of describing it. The landowners, the farmers, the contractors, the contractors were professionals, they were being paid, but the local communities and the local businesses who all responded to this in such an incredible way. Certainly the Mayor and I are determined to look at the recommendations and the learning from this, from both the Fire and Rescue Service report, but also the wider Local Resilience Forum, to ensure we make some of those recommendations, to ensure that there is learning that will ensure that that partnership prevails, and that the strength of that partnership is something that we support, because we know that brilliant though the Fire and Rescue Service is, we will always need to support major incidents with partners, and that's why actually it was such an incredible effort on the moors last year. Jonathan, do you want to come back in?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I lost you all at various points of this presentation started. I wasn't able to lead into this. Look, there's a personal and professional thanks from me to a lot of people, and they're all listed on that slide there. There's also an acknowledgement from me to everybody in service, and that includes my SLT, who went significantly over and above during what was, and the key word here is unprecedented. This exceeded anybody's planning assumptions, anybody's assumptions whilst we were working in there. But nonetheless, the outcome has to be that we are all stronger together for the communities. And I think I'm hoping you would agree, and the public, that we've fulfilled our duty of candour. We've thrown the doors open, we've shone a light on everything we've done, and we will continue to improve what we're doing. Yes, that will take time, and it's right that there is the public scrutiny of myself and of the service from you, but we've made that commitment. and it's clear within this report. So thank you once again from myself to everybody involved, personally, professionally, and your office and yourself and the Mayor for the support throughout all of this. But ultimately, we will continue to improve, and that scrutiny is right. Thank you.
And what we'll explore, just for the purposes of anyone watching, what we will explore is the best way of monitoring progress against some of those recommendations and how we update the public, in particular around how those recommendations are being actioned. Certainly, I think that the debrief report from the Fire and Rescue Service is incredibly open and reflective about what the learning is from that wildfire. And as you say, you know, it's not just about people who were out there on the moor with a hose and a fire appliance fighting the fire or putting the fire breaks in, but actually the senior management team of the Fire and Rescue Service, you were all exhausted. It was incredibly a Herculean effort from senior officers in the Fire and Rescue Service to keep everything going, both on the moors but also everywhere else. During that period of time. So we're also just trying to make sure that we're doing the learning to ensure that we've got the right kind of capacity and support at the senior level as well as the operational level on the ground to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep people safe. But thank you so much for doing the presentation today, because I think that's important. The reports come out today and that we've acknowledged that, but it will be a part of an ongoing monitoring and scrutiny that we will be doing in these forums and elsewhere going forward as well. So thank you for that, and apologies that has taken slightly longer than planned. We'll have to try and whistle through particularly a couple of the other sections hopefully now to save a little bit of extra time. If we can, I think, move on to the performance section.
Yeah, that's me again, Deputy Mayor. I'll just load the
yes.
pack up 2 seconds. Yeah, can you just confirm that's pulling through okay?
I can't see it on presentation mode. Oh, yes, I can now. Thank you.
Right, lovely. So we last reported performance for North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service in April. So we have 2 further months to report this year, not a full quarter yet, but April and May. So for some of the areas that I'm going to cover today, there will be the first 2 months of this fiscal year. Some of them we're going to go back a longer period to apply a bit of context in terms of what's changed versus previous years. So firstly, an incident summary over last, quite a stable picture in terms of the last 12 months from June to June versus the previous period. We're attending on average between 8,000 and 8,500 incidents per year. There was a 6% increase. Some of that is because this reporting period still picks up the busy August we had last year, including the Fylingdales Moor incident. In terms of trends, false alarms have creeps up slightly, 7% versus the previous 12-month period. Fires are promptly stable despite the summer months and the Langdale incident, and special services have remained very stable. So not masses to report. False alarms continue to be our biggest attendance, firstly for apparatus, second good intent, followed by fires, small fires in the open. So a relatively stable picture over the last 12 months, just slight increases in some areas.
So my only question on this slide, because we do look at it every time, is we've obviously had the change in the, I think it was in the community risk management plan, but anyway, the change around the attendance at automatic fire alarms, which is just being implemented at the moment. It was just really what your anticipated change you think and difference that you think that will make in terms of what you're anticipating in terms of that light blue block going forward in terms of those false alarm call outs.
Yeah, it's hard to predict and project what impacts it will have. We certainly expect it will bring that down. The challenge with the false alarm caused by apparatus, you can see that that's 2,412 times that fire engine has been deployed to something and stop them from doing other meaningful work. It creates additional road risk by travelling unnecessarily on blue lights. So we're certainly hopeful, and the reason the change has been brought in is to reduce that figure. It's very difficult to kind of project where that will fall to. I don't know if Tom wants to come in here from any of his national learning in terms of other services, but it's quite difficult to project, but it creates further evidence for the need to make such a change.
And Tom, if you're coming in, would you mind also clarifying those acronyms, the FFF, FAAP and FAGI?
Yeah, I can jump in at this point. Yeah, so we've got false alarm due to apparatus, or you've got false alarm good intent. So I think there's two bits around this. So yeah, as of the 1st of July, we are making the changes that were put out in the community risk management plan. That will see a reduction in any non-attendance to anywhere where there is non-life risk or non-confirmation of a fire. As soon as there's a life risk involved or a confirmation of fire, that is where we will still attend. What we're finding is, as we're seeing a reduction in the sort of the commercial environment, we are seeing an increase in the actual domestic environment. So we are seeing heightened levels of vulnerability within our communities. And hence why we're getting mobilised to some of these. We do need to do a bit of work nationally around the difference between a false alarm good intent. There should be more of them, because often the apparatus has been activated due to an activity within the house that has then led to that going off, rather than an out-and-out system fault or an actuation due to being too close to something. So then when we get there, we do actually do an intervention. Then we do some post-incident engagement with the resident and so forth. So we need to do a little bit more as a sector around that as well, to try and get more accuracy around that. And locally level, we probably need to do a little bit around commercial versus domestic as well. So we're getting that real clear understanding of what we've brought out within the community risk management plan is taking place and working, and then also monitoring that domestic environment as well.
And then presumably, if the number comes down, that means that fire response teams can be deployed to do something else, because that's the whole point of the change, isn't it?
It is around the commercial environment for sure, yeah. And the domestic environment, where we do get mobilised to that should come with an intervention through a post-incident engagement. Great,
thank you. We can move on to the next one.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the data of the last 2 months, they're going to be in our 3 key areas of delivery, so prevention, protection and response. So the first slide there, around 2-3 years ago in North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service, we undertook around 3,500 home fire safety visits. So last year we set what was quite an ambitious target at the time to increase that to 5,500 and achieved it. We've looked at the capacity in the organisation, balancing against some of the needs, and we've upped the target again this year, only slightly, to 5,750. So as an organisation, based on referrals and target data lists, we're aiming to deliver 5,750 completed home fire safety visits this fiscal year. So in the first 2 months this year, we're ahead of target. So at this stage of the year, after 2 months, that's 16.7% of the year, of the fiscal year so far that's gone, and we're 19.5% of our target completion. So we're ahead of schedule. And for both April and May, we exceeded the targets as an organisation. So a really positive picture of continuing the success of last year as an organisation and trending towards a good place in terms of meeting our targets this year too.
That's great. And just, I think it's on the next slide. The high and very high risk category, is that the next slide?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, in which case we can move on. Thank you.
Okay, so it's really important for us as an organisation that whilst we're looking to kind of increase the volume and quantity of the visits that we undertake, that we're retaining the quality. So by the use of quality referrals from our partner agencies and also target address lists using data and intelligence, what we're seeing now is the vast majority of the home fire safety visits that we have identified do turn out to be high risk premises. So the yellow bars there being very high, and the blue bars being very high. So really positive for us that once, as well as seeing an increase in our output levels, we are getting predominantly into the right homes through the quality of the referrals we receive and the kind of the data that we use to target certain properties for vulnerability as well. So a really positive picture in terms of retaining the quality, if you like, of the number. They are high and very high.
I don't think I've got any questions. I think that's, I think it's incredible that increase is taking place. It's basically prevention in action, isn't it? On that slide. I guess the only challenge is you increased significantly last year in terms of those home fire safety visits in terms of 54%. Just, how stretching the target? How much further can it go before it becomes too much?
Yeah, so from my perspective, it's balancing against other areas of work. That's one element of our work. We've had to balance it up against ensuring that all our risk information is up to date. We've got a significant number of new recruits on our fire stations that need time to undertake training and development. And also you've got to track carefully with a business approach, kind of your supply and demand. So if we ever got to the point where we had masses of work being targeted, but we didn't have the resources to deliver it, we would end up with out-of-date referrals and would inevitably be criticised by the inspectorate as well. So for a number of reasons, it's around a 5% increase this year, which is where we want to be, and just make sure we can maintain that level of supply and demand and balance against other areas of work as well.
Great. Jonathan?
Sorry, this is, and again for assurance to yourself and the public, this was our CRMP commitment to do targeted delivery as opposed to volume delivery, and the number of instead of just the number that we do. As Ben's articulated there, we will continue to monitor where we do this performance. This will fluctuate when there are times when we need to increase crews training or further outputs in line with any challenges that the service faces. But nonetheless, this is a very positive and consistent trend that the service is delivering, and we'll continue to obviously report this progress to yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the prevention team, I guess, who were the ones out there doing the home fire safety visits and who are actually meeting what are incredibly challenging increases in targets, but obviously doing so also, not only meeting the target, but also trying to make sure they're meeting them for the households that need them the most. So those high and very high risk properties. So huge thanks to them. We can move on to the next slide.
Okay, thank you. So they're the key areas of prevention to report today. The second kind of key area of our business is protection. So how we as an organisation ensure that the built environment is safe from a fire perspective as well. So the first key area of work that protection teams undertake is something referred to as a risk-based intervention programme, an RBIT. So that's a piece of work where data and modelling of all the known risk sites within North Yorkshire aims to kind of target based on risk, our highest risk buildings, and then aim to get into those buildings and ensure they're compliant with the regulatory reform order and take action if not so. So the risk-based intervention
Can you just tell me what
program,
kind of buildings they're likely to be in programme 1, those highest risk buildings?
Yeah, so programme 1 would be typically kind of hospitals, care homes, where we've got the highest levels of vulnerability, where if there was a fire, the consequences would be greater. So high occupancy, vulnerability, things of that nature as well. So we work with the CQC to make sure interventions are undertaken, they are compliant with the relative legislation as well. Okay,
Great.
So there are, within our RBIT for this year, we've identified 350 highest risk buildings to provide interventions and assurances on. That's the programme 1 of the RBIT. So this year so far, this fiscal year, sorry, in 2 months, we have achieved 132 in terms of the buildings we've got into or interventions through the measures. So again, 16.7% of the financial year completed, and the teams have made it a great start this year and have already 37.7 the interventions have been applied. So well ahead of schedule as a protection team with that area of core business.
And I guess my only question is, obviously the certain buildings, so care homes, there's often turnover of people who might be living in those buildings, but how do you kind of reprioritise and reassess the level of risk for a vulnerable building, given that there'll always be high risk, but you may have been once in 1 year? Do you go again the next year? Do you go in 6 months? What's the kind of way in which you assess the reprioritisation of buildings that you perhaps are visiting regularly, but to ensure that it's something that is just balanced in terms of the places you're not getting to versus the places that are high risk?
Yes, Tom will probably come in on that one as the director of protection in terms of how the RBIP is an agile tool that forms based on feedback as well. But Tom, I'll let you come in if you can provide an answer to that question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor. It's 3 years that every building within programme 1 will get a visit. Historically, when RBIPs used to be risk-based inspection programmes, somewhat they were driven a little bit on compliance as well, so people will get driven far further forward, depending on historical compliances. However, now, you know, because these are our highest of the high risk premises, we will always visit them within the 3-year period.
Okay, and is that the same for new build? So I'm kind of aware that we're also a region where care home sector is a growing sector, so there'll be new care homes opening all the time. Would there presumably be a condition of opening that the fire and rescue service would sign it off anyway? Would you then visit quite soon after that, or would it be part of the 3-year rolling programme?
Yeah, that would go in through the consultations throughout the build phase, and then when it opened, we would work with them through business engagement, and then they would align to the highest risk category within the risk-based intervention programme. So they will get then further visits within that 3-year cycle as per the other ones that sit within that category.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So brings us nicely on to consultations. Another area of key business for our fire safety protection teams is, as you mentioned before, the consultations that are undertaken. So we do benchmarking. We look at where we stack against the rest of the sector for this. There are set dates and timescales that you should respond to consultations of that nature. So really positively, in the first 2 months of this fiscal year, 98% have been completed on time, which benchmarks very well. And that's despite a year-on-year increase in terms of the number of consultations that were received and required in April and May, which grew from 307 to 327 year on year. So really positive 2 key performance indicators for our fire safety protection teams.
And what's driving that increase in the number of consultations, do we think?
Again, I'd probably bring Tom in for as the head of protection for that. I'm not sure. I assume it's a figure that naturally there's variance in anyway. But Tom, if you want to come in there.
Yeah, I would suggest an area like that is a fluctuation somewhat, but what we can do is we can track that month on month to see if there is an increase in people making alterations, improvements or new builds. So yeah, we could more than happily put that together for the next one to see if there is a rising trajectory.
Just really if there's any particular source of it that might be just changing requirements going forward, but that's I don't have any further questions on that one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's prevention and protection. We move on to emergency response, and the 2 key areas we'll report on today are availability and response standards. So firstly, availability. As mentioned, I think back in April, we were cautiously optimistic about some signs of growth and improvement within the availability of our appliances. A lot of work that's been undertaken by the devoted on-call section over the last 3 years. It's a bit of a lagging indicator where the work you do that day doesn't always materialise straight away. It takes time to get people through recruitment. It takes time for people to achieve competency, become drivers, become crew watch managers, to get a full fire engine available. But cautiously optimistic, in the first 5 months of this calendar year, from January to May, we've seen a year-on-year increase. And you can see in terms of the trajectory, it's increased. So at the first 3 months of the year, it was only kind of 1%. Across April and May, it's become 2-3% year-on-year improvement. So again, cautiously optimistic about what is a very challenging area of the business, on-call availability, but year-on-year, hopefully signs that the work that's been undertaken over the last 3 years is coming to fruition now. Again, amazingly proud of our on-call firefighters and the commitment and the hours they give, the district managers, support staff who provide that. But the first 5 months of this calendar year are showing positive signs within our on-call and overall engine availability.
I suppose my only observation is, I mean, it's great that it looks positive in terms of the direction. It just doesn't look positive on that graph. I have to say those 2 graphs don't look positive if you're looking at them as a non-statistician. So therefore, if there's a way of presenting this information slightly differently, because you're telling me good news, but the graphs don't tell me good news because they're both going in the wrong direction. So I appreciate that they're comparative to each other, because when you look at it more carefully, you can see one is about last year and one is about this year. But it may just be worth finding, and they also start, I think the Y axis starts at kind of 60 odd I think, which will probably also contributes to the level at which it looks like something is bad when actually it's better than we were last year. It's just not very clear from the graph. That's just an observation. Looking when I first looked at that slide, I thought it was a terrible piece of news, and then when you look at it more carefully, it is actually positive.
That's fine. Thank you for the feedback. We'll pick it up with the data team. Essentially, over the course of a calendar year, generally on-call availability starts higher in January, and given availability leave challenges with primary employment, declines more through into the summer months. But we'll think about how we can kind of display that quick change slightly differently, because it's the first time in a number of years in North Yorkshire we've seen a year-on-year improvement for the on-call availability. So thank you for your feedback, and we'll
yeah, and you're bucking the national trend as well, which is incredibly positive as well. You know, we do have probably the best on-call firefighters in the country. Am I allowed to say that? But certainly we're bucking the national trend in terms of making them being able to make themselves available, which is also testimony to their employer, their substantive employment and employers as well. Chief Fire Officer, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. But we'll take the feedback onto the slides there. It's important because, you know, this is a subject which comes up every month, and rightly so. What I wouldn't want the public to conceive from this is that this isn't a strategic priority for us. Ultimately, it absolutely is. When 52% of your workforce is only available to you, in theory, 2 hours per week, that's an extremely difficult operating model, but we do everything we can to make sure we not only have that availability, but again, those firefighters are a part of our organisation, a part of our workforce, and they feel that they are. We've done everything we can and will continue to do everything we can to invest in their health and safety, their PPE, fitness standards. We've put treadmills onto stations to help support their fitness. It is and will continue to be that very difficult operating context for us in how it seems to be reported, but there is an enormous amount of work goes on in the background. And again, thanks to the staff and everybody that gives us that time for all their communities. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I've got no further questions on that other than please look at the graphs that it looks negative and it's actually not negative. So yeah, thank you.
That's fine. Thank you. So the last slide in terms of performance for the first 2 months of the financial year are the response standards. So as we report every OPM, we have 2 publicly agreed response standards in North Yorkshire. The first is to achieve an average incident response within 13 minutes to all incidents, and specifically for dwelling fires within 11 minutes. So you can see in the first 2 months of the fiscal year, all months have achieved the response standards for both of them, and in a good place. So yeah, positive terms. I don't think there's too much more to say on that. We obviously strive hard, all the areas we can control. There's always natural variance in terms of where incidents happen, whether they're further or closer from fire stations, but call handling times, turnout times of our crews, and then working hard on availability. So response standards met for both dwellings and all incident types for the first 2 months of this financial year.
Great. Yeah, I suppose my only question, which I think I do ask quite regularly when we look at this data, is just what the range is between the fastest response time and perhaps the slowest response time. Obviously those are the averages, and there will be quite a range in there. Just I think the public would probably appreciate understanding the wide range, which people do understand, but certain areas of the county probably do struggle more than others for response time. So just understanding what the range is would be helpful.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
Okay. Will it be possible to have that range included in future slide packs?
We're certainly going to look at something we can look at. It's no problem.
Jonathan?
Yeah, absolutely. We can move on that. We would then put a caveat on the understanding that we wouldn't then want that to present an image of people having fear if they live further away from a fire station. Ultimately, we have to understand we have some very super remote rural communities, and naturally then by virtue, they are further away from our fire engines, and we do everything to maintain that availability. But in a county with no significant A roads or motorway network, our drive time is what it is. We're doing everything we can to decrease the call handling time and decrease the mobilisation time, but without network on obviously some of our significantly small roads, drive time will always be the challenge for those remote rural communities. Thank you.
Absolutely. But actually what it might also encourage people to do, if they do know that they live further from a fire station is to ensure that they request a home fire safety visit, perhaps, because we know that the turn-in times in some of our more rural areas will always be longer, and actually that means that people, if they're able to be aware of the risks in their own properties or businesses, that just helps the fire service as well. But I've got no further questions on that. That's great, thank you.
Okay, and that's it for the forms pack for the first 2 months. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you so much. We're moving on to water safety, and I think, is it Damien for this one?
It is, Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Great, I am ready when you are.
Yeah, can you just confirm that you can see the slides and that you can hear
Yes,
me?
I can, thank you.
Lovely, thank you. So first of all, with regards to our response, so all of our stations maintain a minimum qualification of DEFRA Module 2. So DEFRA stands for Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. That is the national agreed standard. This standard equips our firefighters across the whole of the service area to operate safely in shallow water environments and to support our specialist water rescue teams. As you can see from the side, we have 6 swift water rescue stations. These are strategically placed across North Yorkshire, and they're based at Selby, Whitby, Malton, Richmond, Skipton and Ripon. Crews at these stations are trained to operate in, on or around moving water, undertaking technical rescues in hazardous and dynamic environments. We have also got a powered rescue boat, which is based at Selby Fire Station. These are trained and qualified to Module 4, which is Water and Flood Rescue Technician, and they can act and are trained as boat coxswains. This represents the advanced level of swift water rescue capability, and it prepares our responders to work in extreme, complex and high-risk water environments, including advanced boat operations. To support these at all incidents, we have tactical command. So the service maintains a cadre of station managers that are qualified to Module 5. And this equips our officers to command, coordinate and manage water and flood incidents at a tactical level to ensure our safety and effective incident management. And finally, within North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service, we have a qualified Module 6 Water and Flood Tactical Advisor. This specialist provides expert advice during wide area flooding, both within our own service area and can be called on nationally, and they contribute nationally as Vice Chair of the National Fire Chiefs Council Inland Water Rescue Group.
A couple of questions on that slide. So the photo is, I think, I think that is on, is it King Staines? It's in York, it's opposite the Lowther and the King's Arms in
Yes.
York. So just really to understand what the level of risk is in York compared to elsewhere, so I can just understand the data, and also what the provision is in York, because they're not listed in your list of 6 swift water rescue stations. So what is the level of risk in York, and what is the provision currently in York, please?
Certainly. So we will come on to an incident summary shortly, which will show the level of incidents that we have up and down the county. But obviously we appreciate the river that runs through York does provide additional... sorry, I'm just getting background feedback there. So it does provide risk within that area. So crews in at York and Acomb are trained to Module 2. They're equipped for bankside support with reach poles, throw lines, and they will soon have access to what's known as a FRED, which is what you can see on the picture there, Deputy Mayor. This is a remote controlled buoyancy aid and rescue device. These tools enable rapid deployment to provide immediate buoyancy and stabilisation to casualties without committing firefighters into the water. This is critical within the York area, as many of our water incidents require that immediate deployment and response. There isn't currently a boat at York, but deploying a rescue boat, particularly when it's not already on the water, can take longer due to the need for crew preparation, for the donning of their dry suits, and any launching arrangements. But within the York area, we've had significant engagement with and memorandum of understanding with the York Rescue Boat, which is operated by trained volunteers. They proactively patrol high-risk areas during peak periods. Given that our crews must remain available for a wide range of incidents, not just water-related incidents, we can't replicate that dedicated on-water presence, but instead we ensure that we provide a safe, rapid and effective bankside response within York currently.
And just in terms of those 6 swift water rescue stations, are they effectively, is that effectively static in terms of provision, or do you align those locations to the areas of greatest risk? If that risk changed, might those locations change?
Certainly. So yeah, it is all risk dependent. We look across it, and I'm sure when we get onto the engagement and campaigns, we use not just our data, but partner-led data to identify those areas across the county where we do have incidents. And certainly with any of our specialisms across the county, those specialisms are usually sited in an area, but they can move, and they're a service-wide provision that we can use for anywhere within North Yorkshire. But certainly we look across all of those areas. As you're aware from the previous community risk management plan, we introduced the one at Skipton to cover the risk that we were seeing from increasing water related incidents in that area, and we will do that on an ongoing basis.
And just one other question, just in terms of that module 5 and module 6, which I think those are training levels, aren't they?
Yeah.
And just whether or not how that balances and what the requirements are within those modules, just in terms of having regard for firefighter safety. Obviously, that's a paramount concern, I know, for the service, but just how you balance the needs of the response with the safety requirements.
Yes, certainly. So as it says there, we've got a cadre of station managers qualified to module 5. Within our mid-level leaders operational rota, we ensure that they're available across all of the groups to ensure that we've got 365 coverage for those water incident managers, so they can support. And as you've suggested there, primarily these incidents are complex and hazardous. So it's to ensure the safety of all those responding, as well as those that have unfortunately got themselves involved with a water-related incident. It's really pleasing and useful for North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue as well that we have got the tactical advisor that works on the national level group. So any new data, experiences, equipment that's available to us, we get sight on that from a national perspective as well, from our sort of tactical advisor led module 6 trained member of staff. It's also really good that that individual also heads our operational training, so any of the sort of new findings that come out, we can introduce that very seamlessly into training for all our members of staff.
Great, thank you. Jonathan?
Thank you. I think it's just important that we just reiterate that point, that nothing in the service is static. We review our community risk management plan, which I prepare, and David, the Mayor, authorises. But the point here is that in the CRMP, people will remember that we had climate-related risk, which is both flooding and wildfire. It's a significant focus for us, and we constantly monitor this performance and the risks and also the demand that we receive in these areas, and that feeds then into the next plan. Whether we have to change resources across the county, then we do so in that staged approach. But again, nothing is static. Everything is a constant evolution for us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That's helpful. I think we can move on to the next slide, please.
Certainly, and we've covered some of this already, which is around the training, Deputy Mayor, but the training with these types of complex hazardous incidents is really important. So staff within North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue are trained and qualified to the nationally recognised DEFRA standards and also the National Fire Chief Council standards. The service maintains its own cadre of in-house instructors. These are fully trained through Outreach Rescue in Wales, and that ensures that as a service we're fully compliant with both DEFRA and NFCC requirements. All of the water rescue qualifications operate on a defined revalidation cycle, and all our staff are required to complete ongoing continuous professional development to maintain their competence between revalidation points, and a lot of that is done on known sites across North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue. Where it's practical to do so, the service aligns its training and qualification frequencies with the DEFRA flood rescue concept of operations, and for the boat that we've currently sited at Selby, for boat operations, the service follows the NFCC boat code, which ensures that we're following safe, standardised and nationally compliant boat handling and rescue practices. Given the incidents that we've seen nationally, Deputy Mayor, it's really important that we're compliant with these recognised standards.
Great. The Chief Fire Officer put his hand up and then put it down again. Did you
Sorry,
want
was
to
a
come in?
legacy one. Apologies, this screen is.
Oh, right, fine. No worries. Right, just I've got a couple of questions. I'll just ask them all at once, if that's all right. And then if you want to
Certainly.
come back in on all of it together, that would be helpful. I don't think it would be. So just a bit of explanation about the frequency of training and how often people need to be reassessed in terms of their qualifications. Whether there is training for all firefighters, but that some are more highly trained than others, and whether that also applies to on-call firefighters, and also just what feedback is sought to ensure that the training reflects the learning from real incidents that firefighters are responding to.
Certainly. So first of all, the training is graded, Deputy Mayor. So all of our stations are trained to Module 2. We can undertake this in-house, and we go through that with them. When the training becomes much more technical, we take our staff down currently to Wales, to a site in Barla where they do Module 2, Module 3 and above courses at Barla. There is very few sites across the country that offer the proper training environments, and we do have to balance that as well with welfare and well-being concerns for our staff, because we've got to ensure that wherever we go there is a clarity of the water source there, so that our staff don't become ill following that. Like I've said previously, all our instructors go to this Outreach Rescue within Wales, so they can train our staff internally at the lower modules, but then on a periodic basis our staff go to these other sites to get the much more technical information, and that covers everything from self-rescue, rescues in fast-flowing water, all of the hazards and hidden hazards that can be presented by flowing water, and also vehicles in water. So that's done on a regular basis, sort of two yearly cycles, where they will go and get that further specialist training elsewhere.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. The next slide, which I appreciate has got lots of information on and is slightly busy, just shows some of the data that we've got from our incidents over the past 4 or 5 years. So first of all, I will bring your attention to the top left. These are our water-related incidents for the past 5 years. As you can see there, we had a spike in water-related incidents in 2024, but apart from that, we have had relatively stable incidents, approximately between 215 and 220 over the previous 4 or 5 years. That does represent a relatively small proportion of our incidents, given the information that Area Manager Ilsley presented previously. It's approximately somewhere between 2.5 and 3% of our overall incident types. The bottom left, just underneath that, again, this shows the water incidents over time, but this graph sort of demonstrates the extreme variance that we may get from water-related incidents. This is predominantly caused by short-term flooding. So incidents on a monthly basis can vary quite extreme, from anything from 5 incidents up to 60 incidents per month at levels of sort of localized or wide area flooding. On the right hand, sorry, go on.
Yeah, go on. No, you finish and then I'll ask my things. Thanks.
Lovely. So the top right one talks about incident types. And as you can see there, flooding inside people's premises is by far our highest proportion of all water-related incidents, and rescues are a much smaller proportion, where you can see there rescue water from moving water and open water, and rescues from still and shallow water. The graph on the right-hand side is time of day of incidents, and as you can see, the highest proportion are in the early evening, and then anything from 8 o'clock until midnight, and this aligns to our busiest periods for all incident types, not just water-related incidents.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of clarification questions. So just if there was anything that I'm trying to remember now, but any particular contribution to 2024, it doesn't look like it was a particularly bad year for flooding, because the flooding data looks broadly equally stacked in that slide in the top right. So just whether there's any intelligence about what has contributed to that spike in 2024. And then just in terms of the water incidents over time, there's obviously that big spike in the winter, as it seems to be every year in the winter months. But then the other spikes in the year, I'm looking at 2024 again, it looks like there was a big spike in the summer of 2024 as well. So just whether you can just anything, was it a particularly hot summer, or was it or do you think there's anything else that was contributing to that?
Certainly with our water-related incidents, Deputy Mayor, and this was brought up in the community risk profile and the community risk management plan, as you've suggested, most of the changes in incidents and our frequency of attendance are climate related, and this can be on both sides. So it can be localized flooding or wide area flooding that will increase our numbers dramatically, but also periods of hot weather and heat waves where members of our public head off to the natural beauty spots across North Yorkshire and sometimes may go into the waterways and inland waterways to cool down over that period. So that is where we normally see increases in our incident types, and certainly when we get on to look at how we engage with members of the public through our prevention work and through our campaigns, those all sort of target those 2 key points where we have periods of flooding over winter months, and maybe incidents with ice in our waterways, and also periods where it's heat wave and people will be more likely to try and go into the water in some of our natural beauty spots across North Yorkshire.
I suppose my only follow-up question is really, obviously those two demands, they're both climate related, but they're quite different in terms of the response requirement from North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. Responding to flooding will require a different type of response than something involving open water in the summer months, and just really what different training or different kind of thinking is going on in terms of planning around those incidents. And I assume that someone monitors the weather forecast, but I'll just ask that as well while we're talking about it.
Certainly, yeah, and you're quite right there. We do get a lot of partner information, and weather and extreme weather certainly is part of that information that partners share with us on a regular basis, so we can pre-plan. And you're quite right in saying it would be at times a different response, but not on all occasions. Obviously, if we get localised and widespread flooding, you still get those hidden risks from water, and water can act in the same way as what you would see in some of our local inland waterways. So certainly the boat that we've currently got at Selby, that is a national asset on the national resilience, through national resilience that we can use. So we use the boat to support people, those most vulnerable in our communities, so they're not getting sort of trapped by any of those hidden hazards that you get from water. But as you quite rightly say there, certainly the flooding inside premises, that is us pumping out rather than affecting a rescue and supporting anyone that has been trapped by that flooding.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. That's very helpful.
And on this slide, it just shows, hopefully, as you can see, the geography of North Yorkshire there and the incident locations. And as you can see, when we talked about our locations of those water rescue, swift water rescue resources, it sort of aligns to where we're getting most of those incidents across the service. And as we just sort of mentioned, the South District, which includes Selby, Tadcaster and York, does have the largest volume of requests, and that is why sort of the boat is currently at Selby and on that National Resilience Asset Register. And on the right-hand side again, it talks about water incidents by property category. So most again are within dwellings.
Can you just explain the numbers on the map slightly more, because there's certainly I can see over Scarborough, and it looks like Harrogate, York and Skipton there are different numbers on top of each other. Just what do those relate to?
Yeah, certainly. Apologies, this isn't my slide deck, Deputy Mayor, so I don't know this completely, but I think that shows the amount of incidents that have been responded to from those locations. So it's the breakdown of incidents that we saw on the previous slide, but they've overlaid those into the county to show where those deployments have been made.
But is that all in 1 year?
No, I think that's over. Just having a look, that is from the 1st of January 22 to the 31st of March 2026. So it's that 5-year data set overlaid for the locations of where we've had those incidents.
Okay, great. And so actually, are they overlaid because they're slightly different places? They relate to slightly different places. Okay.
Yes.
So one of those numbers will be York and one of them will be Selby. Is that right?
Yes, so you will have incidents around Selby, Tadcaster and York, all within that data set.
Okay, that's I don't know whether it's possible for that map to be made available deconstructed so that all the numbers are slightly clearer. But that's fine in terms of clarification. Thank you.
Certainly, and I can feed that back into the team and we can try and get that so it's clearer for members of the public, and we'll share it with yourself for your website, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, that's great.
So moving on to prevention activity and engagement, as always, we take a risk-informed approach to our engagement activities targeted using incident data and data from partners, seasonal trends and known risk locations, for example, Richmond Falls and our open water hotspots. We focus in on the highest risk groups. This includes young people, inland water users and communities in flood-prone areas. What we deliver education programs in schools, colleges and community settings. This talks about all areas such as open water risks, the hidden risks within our inland waterways, cold water shock, and also for those high risk individuals, how they could assist with self-rescue. As we previously said, it includes seasonal campaigns which cover summer water safety and winter ice safety, and targeted initiatives such as Operation Spotlight, which was at Richmond Falls, and also Student Safety Week, where we use our water flume to engage with members of the public to demonstrate the hidden risks with water and water incidents.
Great, thank you. Just a couple of questions on this slide.
Yeah.
One, just how do we measure the success of the engagement work that's going on, particularly with schools and colleges, but also more widely? You know, how do we measure who we're reaching, whether it's reaching the right people? And related to that, what are the highest risk groups, and therefore who are the groups that you would be seeking to target the most? And then how do you ensure through that engagement work that you're also reaching perhaps the more transient populations? You talked about Student Safety Week, but presumably the whole tourist population is also a risk, particularly in the summer months. Just in terms of, again, what we're doing to make sure that we're reaching everyone in those highest risk groups, but what are they first?
Certainly. So I will start by covering how we provide assurance and evaluation of the activity, and then I'll hand over to Tom. Tom has provided and his prevention staff huge amount of work in all of the engagement that go into this key area. So with regards to evaluation and our quality assurance, all of our activities targeted to known high risk locations and groups. Through our evaluation, we ensure that we're supporting behaviour change and risk awareness in these priority audiences. And hopefully through this and through monitoring of our incidents, it will contribute to reducing water-related incidents and the unsafe behaviours that may happen to contribute to that. Tom has provided me with lots of information, but I will hand over to Tom just to go through some of those engagement and campaigns that we do on a regular annual basis.
Yeah, thank you. So
Thank you.
I guess if we could quickly just go through so we build everything around our prevention activities around two things. We do universal engagements, and then we do more targeted interventions and education. So we make sure that we focus our specialist skills and packages on the right areas around that. So we do a lot of work around online safety campaigns, our website. At the moment, we're doing a lot of campaigns at the moment, and we've managed to utilising the NFCC Be Water Aware tools predominantly, but also using some of our partners who we collaborate with, such as RLSS and RLI materials as well. But we're trying to constantly get them engagements out on our websites and our social media pages, and we have reached over 80,000 views around our water safety advice so far. But going into the educational world, so we start trying to get that educational message around water safety from an early age. So we deliver and we also support and provide schools with something called Stay Wise packages, keeping safe in the summers, which does a little bit around the road safety elements, but also a lot around water safety. We then collaborative approach around the Crucial Crew, which is year 6, where once again they get a discussion about water interventions and water safety. We're finding at the moment, certainly nationally, but the trend of the recent unfortunate losses of life, it was predominantly around year 7 to 10, where they lost a lot of real unfortunate loss of life in that area. So what we're doing around that is we're also launching something called Light Nights campaign that aligns with Dark Nights campaign, which will talk about summer safety again at that age group. But one thing we've just recently done on the back of so many of those tragic incidents with the last heat wave was we've wrote out to all schools offering our water safety provisions, but we've also wrote to every year 11 leaver as well, to say basically about all the very best. You know, obviously you are going to be off for a summer period prolonged longer than usual. Please remain safe, and a bit around water safety within there as well. And then what we do then is when we've got the university starters come in, we do a real focus around water safety around that week. But in relation to your other question around what we're doing, so we work part of the prevention in lots of different areas within the fire sector. We work collaboratively with our regional colleagues, so we do a lot of work around the region, and unfortunately within the Craven area we are seeing people coming from neighbouring fire and rescue service areas, and then unfortunately having incidents within our water. So what we're doing is working collaboratively with those services and putting some packages together. We're also making them packages fully accessible for people whose English isn't their first language, to make sure that we are trying to reach everybody who could be coming into our areas, and try and make sure that they do enjoy our areas, but they do them in the safest manner. I think I've covered all the questions there, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, you have. I've just got one further question. I'm just thinking about it in the context of the wildfire. So just in terms of the prevention work that I know that I've had extensive conversations with probably most of you about, in terms of prevention of wildfires and the areas around the county where we know we've got areas most at risk, particularly from people who might picnic and might take a disposable barbecue. But we've definitely had that conversation in terms of prevention and signs, and making sure that that information is really clear with partner agencies around wildfires. I just wondered whether similar discussions were taking place. I know that I think there's an area of risk in, I think it's near Grassington, near the water there, but just whether or not we're also doing some of that prevention work around water safety, particularly in terms of the signage and public information that's available, regardless of where you live. If you're visiting one of those areas, you would be able to then access it that way.
Yeah, there is. That's exactly right. Around the Grassington area, due to an unfortunate loss of life near there, we did campaign. We managed to get the water boards there, where we've got a throw line and a reach post part of that, and safety advice. So yeah, we have had those fitted. I think one of the key areas what we do look at, certainly in the Craven area where we've got the public safety officers, we actually do, where we identify there is risk areas and heightened risk due to weather, we try and make sure at all times, and that's where, as you can remember from a previous presentation around the public safety service, we changed it to the fact that people are on duty throughout the week now, 7 days, so that allows us to go out and do those engagements with people to try and ensure they are enjoying our county safely.
And sorry, just one final question, because again, I just want clarification, I think, for the public. I think we've probably talked a lot about rivers and water inland, but just what's the situation on the coast?
Yep, so once again, we're working collaboratively with the RNLI and the Coast Guard around that. But we offer help and support and information about. So part of our safety campaign has been safe in and around the inland, but also your trip to the coastal areas. So it covers the coastal bit as well within the educational piece.
But are the Coast Guard and RNLI, they would be the lead agencies on the coast. We would be a kind of secondary support agency in that space. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. We can move on.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Tom. I think we may have covered quite a lot of the things with regards to our campaigns. I can go through what's on the slide, Deputy Mayor, but do you have any questions around that? Because I know that Tom has just...
Question, I suppose. Any local groups, you know, scouts, guides, you know, life-saving groups, what do they do if they want to get further advice and information about the campaigns that are being run by the Fire and Rescue Service?
Certainly. Tom, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, can do. Yeah, either the information is available on our website, or please email us on the prevention inbox email address. So we could maybe share that after this with the slides or somewhere on your group. But yeah, if not, all that information is available on the website.
Great. Thank you. And yes, I'd be very keen to ensure that we put that information in the public domain and we share it into the Facebook groups locally and regionally where we know it can have the most impact.
Thank you. And then the final slide is with regards to our coordinated multi-agency approach. And we have covered some of this previously, but we work with the Environment Agency and also local authorities. That's with regards to flood planning and also response. As Tom's just mentioned, we work with the RNLI and local water safety groups, and we work with North Yorkshire Police, who chair the sort of community water partnerships. We have got that shared risk and intelligence, which allows us to identify those high-risk locations and vulnerable individuals, target our prevention and any early intervention through that dedicated prevention resource. And we've also got the ability to access tools such as the Priority Services Register, which is a partner-led register that allows us to identify those who would be most vulnerable if it was during emergencies. That not only covers emergencies such as flooding, but is also available for us for things such as utilities disruption, so it can ensure that we prioritise those that may be most at risk within the communities when an emergency presents itself. This partnership approach allows us to be risk informed, so that's based on shared data and intelligence from across all partner agencies. It's proportionate as it's focused on highest need areas and those most vulnerable, and it's aligned to local priorities and risks, and obviously is identified through our CRMP and community risk profile. And it is also referenced heavily, which within Tom's new prevention strategy, which is currently out for consultation, and that identifies these risks relating to climate related and environmental risks and offers up how we will strengthen our preparedness and reduce harm within the communities from water related incidents.
And just one question, because partnership and multi-agency working is always something that I know it's a priority in the fire and rescue plan, but also I know it's just part and parcel of the way in which the service operates. I just wondered how you kind of coordinate lead responsibilities and ensuring that those partnerships are working kind of effectively, and that people who does the holding to account when it's cross-agency working in terms of different people's lead responsibilities. And then just a second question, really, just because they're not listed on there, but businesses and particularly partners and businesses that might be operating close to beauty spots, what's the kind of partnership responsibility for those agencies, and how do we just ensure that that coordination is happening and that people are being held to account? It may not be us that should be doing it, but appropriately by the right agency.
Yeah, you're quite right, Deputy Mayor. So water safety is a shared multi-agency responsibility. Each partner contributes within their remit. So that would normally mean local authorities typically lead on infrastructure, such as the signage you've talked about earlier and environmental safety measures. While partnership forums such as the Water Safety Group that we mentioned, which is chaired by North Yorkshire Police, and the Safer York Partnership allow us to coordinate policy, share our understanding and offer that joint action. As a service, we contribute through our prevention work, community safety and emergency response. We use our operational expertise to inform these discussions, but we have seen from across these groups that risks are best managed collaboratively through these partnerships, ensuring that are consistent and we have a locally aligned approach. With regards to businesses, you know, that engagement will be through those coordinated groups that we can engage with them through those partnerships to support with those wider priorities that are identified.
Okay, that's great. I suppose I'm just thinking, I know that certainly we've been having extensive conversations about the road safety partnership, for example, and the new focus that we're putting on road safety, but just whether or not there's consideration of whether some of those other partnerships also might benefit from just reflections in terms of just making sure that they are delivering what they need to deliver on behalf of the public. But I've got no further questions on the slides. That's really helpful. Thank you. I think, thank you to Damien and to Tom for that presentation, incredibly helpful, really important in the summer months that people are aware of the actions that the Fire and Rescue Service are taking, but also just aware also of the advice both from the Fire and Rescue Service and just more widely in terms of how to stay safe around water in the region. I think we've got to the final, I don't have any spotlight questions today because we kind of moved that section around in order to deal with the Langdale report, which we dealt with at the beginning of the meeting. But I think we've got one update on HMICFRS, which I think we may be back to Area Manager Ilsley for that, I think. Is that right? Is that right? Ben, is it you? If you're talking, I can't hear you.
That's fine. Apologies. Yep, just share my screen. So
No worries.
now. So reporting by exception times against us.
Ben, sorry, I'm just mindful of time. My main question, just in terms of trying to finish broadly in a timely way, my main question was just to understand what the next steps were in terms of, we've got the updates on the slides in terms of where things are at in terms of the recommendations, but just understanding what the next steps are, both in terms of the wider HMICFRS report, but also just in terms of the some of the other areas that I know that you're covering.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll skip to page 5, slide 5 then. No problem. So in the previous slides, it just demonstrates the progress made as an organisation against our current AFIs from the report that was released last year. They're all on track and working fine. The progress towards the 16 recommendations made in the Standards of Behaviour report. So work is now being undertaken by us in the assurance team to look at any wider areas of the organisation. So we've just sent a year's worth of data to HMICFRS showing areas of performance from the last financial year. So we're analysing that now to look at where we benchmark against other organisations and also analysing our organisation against the characteristics of good that HMICFRS make clear for their inspection portfolio. This is now the 4th round of inspections by HMICFRS into fire and rescue services. More reports have just been released this week into a couple of other fire and rescue services. So again, we're looking at any trends that are coming out of the round 4 inspections. So in a couple of months' time, the digital analysis pack by NYFRS will be updated with all the services data, and that will help us understand where we're currently benchmarking in some key areas of performance. So the work going into the next inspection now is around preparation to get ourselves in the best position to achieve another positive report and improve from the previous NYFRS inspection. The only other point, I guess, of note is there was a thematic inspection that NYFRS undertook looking at cyber risk. So they went into a small number of fire and rescue services and police forces. North Yorkshire was one that was selected, so they looked at our kind of shared IT service and any cyber risk. And we expect that imminently that thematic inspection will re-report in either June or July. So when that comes into the service, we'll look for any pertinent areas of our performance, any recommendations that we can use to make ourselves more cyber secure. So that's a bit of an overview of, I guess, a whistle-stop tour of where we are, the work being undertaken and the next steps. And we anticipate our next NYFRS inspection will be early to mid of next year in 2027.
Great, thank you. So would we anticipate that thematic inspection is likely to, we can have an update through this section of the meeting in the September meeting? Is that what we would anticipate?
I'd be happy to. I'll speak to the head of or director of IT.
The fire chief is probably going to clarify. Jonathan, you want to come in?
Yes, just from as you know, a national position there, we do get a pre-read of the report, but nothing has been released yet by the HMI. When that does, then we'll know, but no timescale has currently been issued by the HMI on there yet, so we can't give an approximate date.
Just one question, Area Manager Ilsley, if I may, just on you've talked about the closing of the areas for improvement, but just if there's anything you could add that's kind of the converse point, which is the areas that the service is focusing on that are about the improvements at the other end. So at the same time as the areas for improvement work, presumably there's other work going on around the good or outstanding areas that you're wanting to improve within the service. So just anything you can add on that at the same time would be helpful.
Yeah, that's correct. So we're in a positive position where we received just 7 AFIs at the last NYFRS inspection. They used to have 11 diagnostic areas. That's been trimmed down to 10 now. So work has been undertaken by the assurance function as though we were inspectors looking at the organisation now and analysing ourselves against the criteria, the characteristics of good, to see if there's any deficiencies in there, if any of the data is of concern. So that work's ongoing now and over the next quarter. So well in advance of the next NYFRS inspection, we should be in a position to have a good understanding of the positive evidence we have and any contrary indicators and anything that we have then got time to resolve before the next inspection next year.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good to know that you're looking in both directions, which is obviously really important in terms of the directions of travel. I don't think I've got any further questions on that, but I do think we've got one public question, which I'm hoping someone's going to put on the screen. Otherwise, I've got it here and I can read it out. From Christopher in York. Thank you, Christopher, for sending your question in. The question is that the fire and the police have both been involved in on many sad occasions when people have drowned in the York rivers. He's suggesting that if there were grab chains for people to hold on to, people might have been able to survive for longer. I think we have covered some of this during the course of the presentation on water safety earlier on, but the question's really whether grab chains can be installed and whether this opportunity can be explored. And he's talking particularly about the Brownie Dyke and Blue Bridge areas, which I think is further along from the photo that was in this slide pack that we looked at earlier. I actually now, was it Damien, was it you that did water safety? I think it was, wasn't it? From memory, I think you said that the actual capital investment for alongside the river is something that actually sits officially with the local authority, but it would be something that we would be working in partnership with them on. Is that correct?
Certainly, yes. So the Water Safety Group, which is chaired by North Yorkshire Police and the Safer Yorkshire Safer York Partnership. We can raise this with those Deputy Mayor, but normally, as I previously said, local authorities typically lead on infrastructure such as signage. These grab chains would form that. I've never been present on that group, but I can have a look and see if it's previously been brought up and if there's any issues with regards to these grab chains, but certainly that can be raised again, certainly from the member of the public raising that at this meeting.
Great, thank you. And certainly I think, you know, anything we can do for advocate for more measures to be put in place by the water that will help to keep people safe, I think that's a very sensible suggestion. And I know there's already extensive materials by the river already, but they do sometimes get vandalised, so also just making sure that they are maintained and monitored regularly. I've certainly reported a missing lifebelt not that long ago when I noticed it by the river, but anyone can do that as well and report those things in. Thank you for that, and if we could just make sure, if it's okay, that we pass on that question from Christopher in York to the partnership in York to make sure that they are aware of that specific request, and whether there's anything we can do about that. I mean, just on that, what I will say is the community fund, my community fund that the Mayor and I oversee, does allocate water safety project money. We funded a series of projects over recent years, from the Sea Cadets to the rescue boat, and including some money for campaigns as well. So that may be something that they want to explore. And certainly, I would just draw people's attention to the existence of that fund. People can apply for up to £30,000 to support communities to stay safe in our region. So please do that. The next submission deadline for the community fund is the 12th of August. So good timing to ensure that if people did want additional support for water rescue and water safety, that can be done through that community fund. I think we are at the end of the agenda, unless someone's going to tell me that we're not. I just wanted to clarify that the next meeting, the next online public meeting, will be with North Yorkshire Police on the 13th of July. The thematic topic for that meeting will be the use of AI and facial recognition, which I know I have expressed asked for a number of assurance questions on, and I think that information is now in the public domain, but we'll be looking at that in a bit more detail on the 13th of July with North Yorkshire Police. And then we'll be back with the Fire and Rescue Service on the 17th of September for their next online public meeting. A huge thank you to everyone who's been on the call, particularly to the Fire and Rescue Service presentations. Incredibly helpful and insightful as always. Thank you also to members of the public who've submitted questions and comments. And just also a reminder that Langdale, Filingdale's, those debriefing information documents are in the public domain, and if people have questions or concerns, they can raise them through my office. But I will just thank everyone for their time this afternoon and look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.